Hi YouTube, how are you doing today? I don't know if you were able to catch the streams on Twitch last night with the Twist preview event. So a bunch of Hearthstone content creators were invited to do a little preview of the game mode and show you what it looks like, which decks could potentially be fun, like try out some stuff already 1 week ahead of time. The mode will probably launch next week. I'm actually not too sure about it, but that's what I think. I haven't actually read the latest blog post that well, so I think next week it goes live. And I was part of the Twist preview streamers yesterday. And I'm not gonna go into too much detail. There is a VOD available on my Twitch if you want to watch all the games. But what I'm going to be doing in this video now is I'm going to show you the top 5 most fun decks I played yesterday. And of course, they might be changed over time. Some cards may not be optimal. We didn't have that much time in the end to play anyway. It was just like for a few hours. But I'm going to show you the top 5 decks, not because they're the strongest, but because I had the most fun actually just playing them and felt a little bit nostalgic with some of them. So I'm just going to show you now, and I hope that you will like at least one of the decks I made. There's a little bit of everything in it. So the first one that I really enjoyed was Small Beast Hunt. Okay, so this is the first list I played. I called it Small Beast Hunter, but that's only just because I call it that because right now in Standard, like, the big beasts are very popular. And this is like a different type of deck which plays more like smaller stuff, mid-rangey type beasts. And the top curve is actually 6 mana, so it's definitely not comparable to the big beast hunter that we have in Standard now. This has a very strong early game. For example, you have the Wolpertinger. That was like one of my favorite 1-drops for Hunter when it was in Standard. Also, you can combo it with Adorable Infestation. That is very, very strong. And Kolkar. This was a really cool card, I think. And yesterday, I did manage to have a few really good turns with it. For example, you go Kolkar on 2, then you coin a 1-mana spell. Preferably like Adorable Infestation or a bunch of bananas, and then you can buff the Kolkar a little bit while summoning 1/1 hyenas with Rush. So you either get a little bit wider on board, or you can insta take some trades if your opponent mates a board. Then there is the Zigzor. Where is it? Here. Zigzor Apex Predator. This was a very cool card. It's 2 for a rush, but it shuffles the Zigzor Prime in the deck. And you can then find the Prime, for example, with the Scavengers. You draw the beast, you give it +3/+3. I don't know if you remember this, but that's very strong. Also, with that spell, you can draw Hollow Hound. So that can buff the Hollow Hound. Then there is the Rhino, also a good target for the buff, because this can push a lot of damage. This pushes a lot. Then what else was in the deck? The Warsong Wrangler. That was like kind of a core card for the hunter in these days when you manage to play the Rhino. Yeah, I would say this was one of the decks I didn't really expect to be that fun, but once I started playing it, I really enjoyed it because it just felt like the old mid-rangey hunter that was very popular a few years ago. So this one is in my top 5. Then the next one is Libra Pure Paladin. I mean, all the decks are pure in the Twist because you can't use neutral cards. But Paladin actually has some rewards for it, such as the Purator and the Countess. So you do want to run these cards in your deck, even though you're playing Libram. I know, like, when Libram was in Standard, people were complaining about it quite a bit. That they say it was boring. Every game was a bit the same. You discount your Librams and you just replay them over and over. But personally, I never found it boring. I enjoyed the deck. I liked playing it, and also I liked playing it yesterday. It felt pretty strong because you have like the early game. Early game is strong. You try to discount your Librams, and then just, you play the Librams, and you also have Countess as an extra finisher, and the Light First Cariel, which is very, very strong because there are no neutral cards in Twist. There is no weapon removal. You can't play Viper, you can't play Ooze, so the Cariel weapon will always be up unless you you equip another weapon yourself, then you can lose it, obviously, but your opponent cannot make you lose this weapon. Okay, so this was the Libra Paladin. For me, it was like not the most fun of the top 5, but it's definitely in my top 5. Next one, Quest Shaman. Now this is a deck I didn't even play that much when it was in standards because I didn't really care that much about it. But I had a lot of fun playing it yesterday. Now, for those of you who don't know how it works, you play the quest on one, and the quest makes you play overload cards, which actually works well with the card that is now in standard Inza, because this reduces the cost of all your overload cards by 1. So if you manage to play this early on in the game, or like around turn 5, all your overload cards will be discounted by 1 and makes completing the quest so much easier. So in the first part of the quest, you play 3 cards with overloads. And as a reward, your overloaded mana crystals get unlocked. So you can just play them. The overload disappears. Then the second part, you have to play 3 overload cards again, and you get a 3/3 taunt. Then in the third part of the quest, you have to play 2 overload cards, and then you get the reward, the Brukan, which, after you've played it, makes all your spells cost twice. So what you want to do is you can play the spell damage dudes or discover more of them with the primordial studies. And then after you played the Brukan quest reward, you can kill your opponent because all the spells cost twice. So for example, if you go lightning bolt with spell damage, for example, it deals 5. It will cost twice, so it will deal 10. And like, so same for the instructor Fireheart. If you discover a spell and you play it on the same turn, like during the turn, it will cost twice. Then you can discover the next spell, it will cost twice. So you see, this has a very big potential to snowball really hard and go for big easy lethals. This was the Quest Shaman. One of my top 5 from yesterday for sure. Then we have the big easy warrior. This was a very, very fun deck when it was in standard. It was not exactly the same, obviously, because we didn't have the rifts and the black rock and roll, but it goes very well in the deck. So what you do in this deck is you only have a top curve of big minions plus commandment. So if you have this on turn 6 or 7, depending on if you have the coin, you play it and you summon one of these big boys with taunt and divine shield. And they are not that easy to clear. Like for example, the Rattlegore. Every time it dies, it resummons with just -1/-1 on the stats. So if this dies, it summons an 8/8 and then a 7/7 and so on. So this you can only get rid of it if you silence it, or else it will just keep resummoning smaller until it dies. But that's a lot of turns away. And the Troublemaker was also a very, very strong card. It still is. So this deck was definitely also in my top 5. It plays a little bit like Control Warrior in the early game, and then you just hope to cheat out one of the bigger minions and win the game from there. Definitely something I would recommend trying. It is a lot of fun. And then the last deck is a deck that you either love or hate, and I love it. I love playing it. I don't love playing against it, obviously, because it's frustrating as hell. But you go deck of Lunacy. All the spells in your deck will be transformed into ones that cost 3 more, but they keep their original cost. So you want to run a bunch of very cheap spells. Play deck of Lunacy. They will all cost 3 more. So they're like, transformed into ones that cost 3 more. So you have a lot of very cheap, bigger value spells in the deck. Then you can discount the spells by playing the Encounters flow. So they get even cheaper. And with volume up, you can draw them. And if you finale it, you can like discover extra copies of it. And then you have the Magister that recasts a spell from each spell school. So it does, like, it casts the spells again. And what I discovered yesterday is that it's not very, very uncommon from Font of Power, if you play it, to get a Romath. So you get all the random spells again from the Romat if you play Font of Power and one of the 3 minions is Romas. Jackpot. But that happened in a few games, so it wasn't that unlikely to happen. Because with the Font of Power, you don't run any minions in the deck, so you keep all 3 of the minions from the Font of Power. So yeah, sometimes there will be aromas and you will high roll even more. Okay, guys, let me know what you think of these decks and which deck you had in mind to try playing when the mode goes live. I will leave deck codes in the description so you can copy paste them for next week if you want to give any of these decks a try. For now, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye!